How do we help our children not repeat our unhealthy patterns of behavior? Welcome to the Therapy Brothers podcast.
I'm Brannon.
I'm Tyler.
We're brothers.
We're therapists.
And we know recovery.
Bring your stories, your questions, your successes with real recovery.
Hey, Tyler, you ready to have some hard conversations?
Let's do it.
Let the Therapy Brothers podcast begin. Oh man, Tyler, I hope you have all the answers on this one because my ears are wide open.
I'm still trying to answer that question myself with my 4 kids.
Gosh, the father guilt of every time my kids do something unhealthy that I do all the time. It's like, oh my gosh.
Is today going to be a case of the blind leading the blind today, Brannon?
I'm just handing it down, you know? So, yeah. How you doing, Tyler?
I'm doing great, man. Things are awesome. I'm recharged from the trip we took a couple weeks ago, or actually we took this weekend, but by the time this comes out, it'll be a couple weeks ago, and it was great. I'm feeling really excited. I love being able to go and get that recharge, having a team of people that you can trust to just kind of decompress with, because it sends you back to your real life with just the right kind of energy, gets you back in touch with your heart. And that's kind of how I'm feeling right now.
Well, I love having guys that will shoot straight with me. They love me. They see things that blind spots of mine, and they're like, what the heck are you doing about this? Or why don't you look at that? Or how, and It's like, I don't take offense to any of it. It's great feedback. And, I just feel the love.
It's kind of funny because we just spent a weekend together, probably asking the exact same question we're going to try to help answer today. So
yeah. All right, let's get to the question then. So, Alice, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
It's really good to have you. If you could just give a little bit of background. We don't want the full story, but a little bit of background and context as to what's gone on in your life, and then some of the struggles and the questions that you're having.
Sure. Well, thank you so much for just being a beacon of hope, and to all the people who have gone before me. Didn't ever know I needed something like this. And of course, we're a part of a club that none of us wanted to be a part of, but I'm grateful for it. So 2 years ago, found out my husband had an affair, and proceeded to make him tell our children to hurt him. And of course, regretted it instantly. They were teenagers at the time, still are teenagers. And so I guess I'm going to fast forward. So everything that happens with that, the whole, what are we going to do? How do we move forward? How do we heal? Broken to the core, touched every single part of my life. Pretty typical. I feel like it's textbook. I mean, just write it down. Obviously unique to me and to him and to our children, but certainly a road. We're on a road and a journey toward healing and reconciliation, and what I like to say, becoming the best version of ourselves. Because what else can we do at this point? So working on all that. In the midst of all that comes a lot of the, mommy guilt, and I was barely surviving from day to day. I could barely take care of myself, much less my teenage boys. And I have a lot of questions in my head that consistently go on. And so you really highlighted it. So for sure, I see a lot of our junk in our kids, also the good stuff, but I do see that, and it raises its head. So the question for me is, are there things that I could be doing or pointing to besides our healing, besides the road that we're taking? I know they're watching. We just had one go to college, so not around as much, but I know they are dealing, and they have their own things. And I've told them, deal with it now, deal with it later. You can deal with it. And so we tried counseling. One was really into it. The other was not. So just kind of what tools or what do I say? What kinds of conversations do you recommend? And I know it's unique per child and per family. I get that, but there may be some things that I'm missing or that I haven't heard. I haven't really heard you talk a lot about coming back as a family. And that's just where I'm at now. Like, how do we bring it? How do we just kind of connect and regroup and get back to each other?
Can I ask you a couple questions here before we give you some answers? Two questions. What's your relationship like with them now? And what's your husband's relationship like with them now?
I feel like my husband's is getting actually stronger than before, which is nice to see. And he feels, I don't think he feels that way. I think he still feels I'm sure that's his own shame. But I see some better connection and some more intentional behavior there.
Okay.
I'm in my head a little too much, I think, criticizing or analyzing what I'm seeing. Like, maybe it'd be better if I wasn't there, which I know is not true, but it's just this constant, is it enough? Am I saying the right thing? How honest do I be? Did they really know? Of course, they're never going to know what it was like to be me. Never do I want them to know. However, it's just trying to help them heal, but we're close. I would say I'm really close to my kids. I asked my youngest the other day, how did he feel about our relationship right now? And I said, do you think it's the same or different? And he goes, I feel like there was some distance, but I feel like we're coming back together, which I think, because I think I'm at a point where I can probably.
And how old is he now?
16.
16. Okay.
And the other one's 19, or be 19 this week.
What's your relationship like with your husband right now? Is it in a good place? Is it moving in the right direction? Is it?
Yes. I would say it's getting better. It's moving in the right direction. I would definitely say that. We're both committed to the restoration side, and I feel confident, maybe for the first time, that it's going to be, we're going to make it. I feel really, I see the light more than I have in a really long while. Perhaps maybe that's why I'm ready to have a conversation with you all about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Tyler, do you have any questions?
Yeah. So I think, there's what I hear in your question is that you're looking for specific tools and techniques and tactics to be able to not only to maybe talk to your children, but then also to give to your children. But I also think that underneath it, and I think you even alluded to this in the way you phrased your question, is that there's also a process that's going on here. And that process is going to be just as important, or maybe even more important than whatever tools or skills or things. And we can teach some of those things today, but that process is vitally important, because by nature, when these things happen, your life was blown apart. And as part of being blown apart, you disclosed certain things in certain ways. You can't go back and take that back. Things were talked about in certain ways. You can't go back and change those things. And so by nature of that, there's also a process that now your kids are following. And it sounds like you've gone through the worst part of the depths, and now there's sort of a reparation process that's going on between just you and your kids. Hopefully that process is happening between their dad and and them as well. And if you're following that process, then any other tools that you gain will just be benefits to you. But those tools alone won't do any good unless the process is being followed. Does that make sense?
Yes. Well, and it's funny when I talk about these things in my head, I go, I know they're just going to tell me. I just have to go through to get through it. And it's all part of the process. And if I'm seeking his will and I have a heart for the restoration, not only with my husband, but with my children, right? That it'll just happen. I mean, in my head, I can say that.
To just kind of get to the end here, and maybe we can work backwards and help you get tools to do this. But the reality is what your kids need is love. And I know that sounds so cliche and whatever. Your kids need love. So they don't need mom to use them for her validation. They don't need they don't need to be forced to process this, the cookie cutter way of what the therapist tells exactly what they need to do. They need their hearts connected to, and they need love and space and compassion to process pain. Now, your job is to get, and here it is, what you already know, is to get as healthy as you possibly can so that you can give them that love. And
he hates that answer.
But if we back up, there's actually a lot to that. And so you can see breakdowns in being healthy, like your fear, for example. If your fear comes up of, am I doing the right thing? Am I wounding them? Am I not? Oh my gosh, I feel so guilty about what I'm doing. Like you can stop for a minute and you can say, I shouldn't do that. Well, let's stop and look at, like, why am I doing that? How come I'm getting caught up in some anxiety or fear here? And what do I need to do to work on that so that I can show up for them? Does that make sense?
It does. And yes, you nailed it on the head for me. Is I get wrapped up in, when I get off kilter, 9 times out of 10, I feel like I'm much better at just staying in the truth of loving them well is critical. Letting them go through their process, which makes so much sense to me. They've got to do it their way in their time, we all are going to get pummeled by something in life. And I always think, well, at least they were around us to do it together. And so maybe they'll be more equipped in their future for something else that might happen. But
do you believe that, that God sent them to you for a reason?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, I love that. Yeah. That means Allison doesn't need to become exactly this certain thing in order for them to process this and heal their generational trauma or whatever. What they need is you. They need Allison and your uniqueness, your beauty, who you are as a mother, as a soul. They need Allison. Right. So your way of helping them process and your way of helping step into that and your way of connecting to their heart, that's what they need. And so when shame and shoulds and fear and all these things start to muddy the waters, and you're stepping in this direction or that direction because you're confused and not just confident in who you are and knowing that gets in the way of providing that love. So you don't need to read the textbook of how to do this with them exactly. Rather, owning you and loving you and being grateful that you're there to help them through this.
I did a disservice to myself for a while where I was really questioning, am I the right person to be their mom? It just came through all of this. I didn't feel that way before. I would make mistakes before and like, what am I doing as a mom? Whatever. But in this, it must be my own shame or whatever I was feeling at the time. So I think you're right. I think I did do that. I don't know that I've done that lately. So it's good to hear that though, and reflect on it and identify, that I actually was definitely questioned, but I know that God gave me these 2 boys for a reason. For sure. And I believe that 100%. And he picked me to be their mom. Like he needed me to be their mom.
Al, could I, in an effort to try to speak your language a little bit and give you at least a little bit of what you're wanting, could I give you some structure to maybe look at, like a recipe that can be followed, so to speak? It's more process oriented than just check the boxes. So
I'm ready.
Right? You got your pen and your paper ready.
I'm always ready. I'm always like, okay.
So this is something we've talked about this before in the podcast, but I'm going to walk you through it, and I'm going to maybe pause in each section and relate the process to the actual recipe part of it, if that's okay.
Okay.
So in a book, there's a book we always reference. It's one of my favorite books called The Anatomy of Peace.
Okay.
There is a part of the book that talks about how to help things go right when you're trying to have influence in the life of another person. And I think your question is boiling down to, how do I influence my boys into the healing process that they inevitably have to have? So that's why I'm going to walk you through this. Okay. So imagine that there's a triangle and it's got different layers to it. At the very bottom layer is that it says to obtain a heart at peace. All right. I need to get a heart at peace. And then the next layer above it is that I need to build relationships with others who have influence on these people or my children. And then above that, I need to build the relationship. Above that, I need to listen and learn about their world. And then above that, I need to teach and communicate. And then at the very top, I can correct them or challenge them. Okay. So you have all those layers. So what the anatomy of peace says is that most of us, because we see the pain point or the pinch point of they need to be corrected or they need to be taught or we start at the top of the pyramid without ever addressing the bottom of the pyramid. And then what it does is it actually works counterproductively to where we actually want to go to be effective. So to start with, we have to actually start, and this is where Brannon was going with you, is I need to obtain a heart at peace first, which is I need to get out of the way of my own self-judgment. I need to get out of the way of judgment of the other people, whoever that is. And when I heard you say, yeah, God wants me to be the mom of my children. Okay, that means that you're accepting the truth of this and your heart's at peace with the process, right? That's the bottom layer of the triangle here. So then the next step up is I need to invest myself into building relationships with other people who have influence on my children too.
Yeah.
I need to build relationships with my husband. I need to build relationships potentially with my children's teachers or church leaders or coaches or friends, whatever that is, because those people will inevitably be a part of the process of the healing for my children too, because they're going to be support systems for them. And then I need to build relationships specifically with my own children. That means shared experiences. That means getting to know them. That means making time and energy to, there used to be an old, ad on TV that would say something and then they'd say something like children, love, it's about time, right? It's like, now I'm building that relationship with them. Now because I'm invested in their life, I start to learn about their world. So your 16-year-old might be in a different spot with the way that they're seeing things or feeling about things or whatever. And you're going to be curious enough to learn about your 16-year-old's world the same way that you'll be curious enough to learn about your 19-year-olds and realize they're both in different places, but you'll be genuinely interested in them.
Yeah.
And then once you know exactly where they're at, because you've been curious enough to understand it, now you can start to teach and communicate at the level that they're at. And then once in a while, there might be some level of push for change or correction. And if you follow that pattern up and down, you'll know when you're knowing it's breaking down, when you hit a wall, that you actually need to go to the lower levels of the triangle and address those things first again. I need to get my heart back at peace. Oh no, I'm feeling guilty again as a mom. Or, oh no, I'm blaming my kids for this or that. Oh, I need to get at peace first, work up the triangle. And when I do that, I have the best chance at helping to influence things to going right. So does that make sense at all?
No. I get it. I mean, that makes a lot of sense to me. The heart of peace has been critical in so many ways, in so many levels. And so
that's where your own healing comes in.
Absolutely. I mean, for sure.
Yeah. And then inside of those layers of the triangle, then there might be skills like, hey, here's one way that we can communicate with each other. We use a skill called the give skill in dialectical behavioral therapy, which is to be gentle in relationships, to be interested, to practice validation, and then to show up with an easy manner in your body language.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. That's a set of skills I'll use as I learn about and communicate with my children now. So there are skills that we can add into that pyramid, but that's the process. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. It's good.
It's and I'm gonna probably take this off into a whole other direction. So get ready to go to the cosmos with me. So
I'm ready.
It's fascinating to me. This topic, I actually love the topic that you're bringing up. It's generational patterns and trauma is so fascinating to me in that the energy lives on even when we die. So it's like, I'll do intakes and I'll talk to people and it's like, well, my grandpa was an alcoholic and his dad was an alcoholic and his dad wasn't, and it just goes, right. Or so-and-so was this, and then that the person after them totally overcompensated to not be that, which caused all these problems. And so like, and your question I love because it's, you know what? In some way, Allison's saying, I'm going to have the courage to do what it freaking takes to not pass this down to my kids. Like, I'll be the chain breaker here. I'm going to be the one, right? And Carl Jung is one of my favorites. I love Carl Jung. And I think he holds a key to breaking generational patterns of trauma. And here's just a couple quotes of Carl Jung. He says, the most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. What you resist persists. We've heard that one. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. So what that is a lot of these generational patterns that go on, we're living in this and they just start to happen because it's the way we're all resonating. And so it creates it in our families and in our lives. And until we're willing to take a deep dive, a real deep dive to look at ourselves and to accept our shadow, to really know that part of us is there and to accept ourselves completely, then we have consciousness, we have awareness, we have an ability to say, oh, like that's why I am the way that I am. And that is me. And now shame gets in the way of that. And this is where shame keeps the patterns of generational trauma going on and on and on. And unless we can get resilient to that shame, we can't accept our shadow. And unless we can accept our shadow, we'll stay unconscious. And if we stay unconscious, we'll pass this right down to our kids. Yeah. So you can see how it requires courage and consciousness in order to look deep within to say, who am I and why am I the way that I am? And once I am conscious of that, then I can own it with my kids. Hey, I know that I struggle with this thing and I know why I do, And so I'm just acknowledging that with you because I know that's there and I know it's probably really hard on you. Versus trying to hedge against it, pretend like it's not there. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So am I making any sense here?
Yeah. I mean, absolutely. I think you're going kind of down that road where I tend to find myself traveling and it gets a little overwhelming because it feels big. It feels really big. And I know that I just need to make the next right choice and the next right decision. And all those together will equal, hopefully, or it will. I don't want to say hopefully, because I really believe that I can make a difference. And
do you know yourself?
I do.
No, look at that confidence. Love it.
I do now. I know, and I feel like a new person emerged a little bit. The core of who I am is there, but it's definitely been. So I've had to relearn quite a bit. So yeah, I feel like I do. I'm learning some more things. And some things came up through all of it, which I think is normal. What I've heard is, some past, I got to deal with a lot of my own stuff from my younger life and as a child. And I got to heal a bunch of that too. And it brought up some other things that I didn't even know were a part of who I was. And, I didn't think I was doing certain things. And I was like, wow, you really are living through your kids, or, you've put your kids on this pedestal and they're instead of God, and they need to, knock the husband and knock the children off and put God back where he belongs. And so, all that, but.
Good. See, but you can speak to that now because you're aware of it.
Sure.
You're conscious of those things. And so that, do you see how you're answering your question there?
I do.
Do you see that answer right there?
Right. Wasn't that counseling? Isn't that how it works? Like you just pull it all out of what's in there.
Yeah. You already know. Your soul already knows.
It's so funny. Like I can tell other people, but I need somebody to help me figure out. It's so funny
that's how we
works.
all are.
You just need people to walk with you for sure.
It's like kind of a true principle, and I think you're bringing it out really well, Brannon. And this is gonna be annoying because there's a lot of C's in this, but what I think we're saying is that curiosity creates consciousness, and consciousness creates choice. And what you're doing is that systematically, when you get curious with those dark parts of your life, with those patterns, with those deeper things, with the demons that are there, when you go and willing to face the shadow and make peace with those parts of yourself, that curiosity and that consciousness then leads to your ability to have greater choice in how you respond. And what you're now doing is you're taking this, and I think this is actually kind of beautiful. The fact that you're here asking the question is it shows you're already on the journey. You're taking everything you're learning, and now you're saying, I want to influence people around me.
Yeah.
I want to change the patterns of my family history here. And that's awesome. And you have the choice to now start to take action to do that you otherwise would just have been dead, living your life through all of this. And in a certain way, the recovery that you've been forced to work is actually going to produce some of the greatest change in your family tree that's ever happened.
Right.
And that's pretty powerful, simply because of consciousness.
Yeah.
How does that sit with you? And what he just said, like what he said about like you're basically he just said your husband's affair has been a blessing. That's what Tyler just said. How do you feel?
He did. I'm almost there.
I would say
I'm almost there. I want to be able to say that for sure. And I've envisioned it, just to be able to say, because I will say I was definitely one of those people that rose-colored glasses and everything's great and we're going to do this, and just very much one of those. And those glasses are amazing. I don't even know where they are anymore. I overcompensated, so I'm trying to right myself to be a healthy place in that. Like
you allowed yourself to process the pain.
Yeah. And then now I'm trying not to react in negative. It feels a little glass half empty versus glass half. Anyway, so yes. And I, early on, I always jump to the end when, and you all said this, and anybody that I've studied or read, or my own counselor said, when you get to the final end of healing is when you're actually able to serve and help others. And I feel like this might be the second step, because I'm like, I just feel like that to me is I think that's what you were just saying, the fact that you've just gotten to the point where it's bigger than that thing, that act, that whatever, and long term, so that you're able to, in my mind, when you were talking, I was like, oh, and I think about all the people who are feeling maybe the same way for whatever reason, drugs or anger or pride or whatever they feel like has been passed down. And I can point and say, look, but you have the opportunity. It's and the choice, right? You have what did you say? Courage. So have the curiosity and courage and consciousness so that you can make the choice, right? I don't know.
Yeah. It's interesting, like something painful comes along in our lives, if someone we love dies, or if there's an affair or whatever it is, anything that comes along, we have an opportunity in those things to face some of our own personal demons, and to learn and grow and to let some of those things go. And it's totally unfair that your teenage boys were presented with facing some of their own personal demons, that they are their personal demons. Now, you look at your role then in this of that pain can either take you out, or that pain can help you face those demons and become stronger. And as their mother, while you're dealing with your own pain and your own stuff and your own grief going on with this affair, it's a really difficult thing to do, to say, okay, I want to be supportive of you as you process this pain. But really, to allow them to go through that, that's going to help them to no longer continue these patterns. Right, Tyler?
That's exactly right. And being there to be, I think, being there to be not only a witness to their process, but an example to their process as well is vitally important, because now Alex can be living through demonstration of the way she's choosing to live her own life, an example of the same kinds of principles that her boys can now do as they've been forced to sort of face some of their own shadows, so to speak.
It's interesting. We're giving her all the answers that she said, I already know these answers, right?
Yeah.
But it's, yes, set the example of processing the pain. Go ahead.
I was going to say, well, knowing and living it out are hugely different.
Yes.
And I know knowing is part of the battle. People say half the battle. I don't know. I feel like living it out has been challenging. And there, obviously, today, I feel like I could conquer it. Tomorrow might be a different day. But I know it's a process, like you said. And I like that you said pain can either take you out, which I was so afraid that was what was happening to me. And some days it did. I mean, honestly, and I know that is normal too, but I didn't, who has a map for this? Like who has a right way or wrong way to talk to your kids, and how much do you let them in and how much do you let them see? And how do you, I left a lot, and I don't know, just trying to would go cry somewhere else so they didn't hear it or see it, kind of thing. Not like I left the home, but anyway, I don't know. And then, so either, like you said, can take you out, or,
the analogy we use all the time is a pile of manure. So,
well, that's what one of my friends, the first thing she said, she goes, he just dropped a pile of manure in the middle of your living room and now you get to clean it up. And I was like,
yeah. But this time he dropped a pile of manure on top of you and your kids. And it's so much that it's so dark that you can't lift your arms up.
It's suffocating.
Right? It's suffocating you, right? And so if you just sit in it and you think, what a jerk for doing that, for dumping all that shit on me, you know what? Like, but your way out of it is to. Do you know what your way out of it is?
I mean, to start digging.
Well, yeah, but you can't move your hands. So you got to use your nose. Like you're pressing up with your face to dig through this stuff. Now think about it. It's going to kill you, or it's going to kill your kids if you suffocate in it, right? But if you press your nose into it and you push through and you face that happened, you get to the top of that. And what is manure? Manure is fertilizer.
Totally.
All right. And this cliche analogy we use all the time, but it's absolutely true with every struggle and trial we have in our life. And teaching your kids this at this young of an age is awesome, because they're going to have other manure dumped on them in their life. Right.
Can I ask a question?
Mm-hmm.
So, and this is just in your experience, kids are watching you be whatever happens. I mean, I know that, I don't know. I'm so curious what they saw in this process. Like, the older boy was pretty good about, like, you showed so much strength and character, and, you showed me how to be strong or whatever. So I just wonder how much, I guess they're watching, right? They're just
yeah.
I mean, how you handle it. And
I think our kids watch way closer than we even realize. Tyler, what do you think?
I agree with that.
I think that's 100% true. And I also think that, let's say we don't get everything right or perfect either, And I heard behind your question that your kids also saw you probably when you felt totally crazy, when you felt totally depressed, when you felt totally, because you had to go through all the things you went through, and they witnessed some of that. And maybe some of your choices and behaviors and even ways of communication came from those fearful or hopeless or angry or emotional places at times. And in your question, I heard almost like, did I ruin my kids? And the answer to that is no. Like, what you now have, because you're conscious and aware of those things, and especially as you build relationships with your children, as you go to your older son's like, hey, mom, you did that with such courage and amazingness and grace. And you're like, okay, good. I'm glad that's what he saw. And then let's say you go to your 16-year-old and you're like, mom, like, things felt volatile and crazy. And like, I don't even know if I can talk to you right now. Like, geez, son, I'm so glad you're willing to tell me that. And you know what? I didn't respond in the ways that even I would have liked. And all you get to do now is you get to demonstrate the same things you've already learned: accountability, curiosity, honesty, empathy. So even if you messed up in the past, when you're conscious of that, and when it comes into the room because you have a relationship that can hold that discussion, you still get to use the principles of recovery that you're already learning to continue to influence your relationship with your child. So in a certain sense, you're going to get multiple chances to continue to do the teaching. It's not like a one-time shot, like, oh, I messed it all up. It's, yeah, if I went and I mess up, and my daughter's like, Dad, that was really scary. I can't believe you know what, girls, you're right. I'm sorry about that. I shouldn't have lost my temper that way. And that's something I'm going to work on. That's just as valuable to my girls as if I was perfect in the first place.
For sure.
Right. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yes, it makes so much sense. And it's so encouraging, I feel like, to remind yourself of that somebody once told me a long, long time ago, it's never too late to say you're sorry or thank you. And in those moments, I love the wording, just when he says, I do feel distant from you. Thank you for sharing. And I'm going to work toward, I did say, and I'm going to work to bridge that gap. Like I want to,
beautiful,
be able to come back together. So yeah, it definitely, yes, that's very encouraging.
My kids started school this last week, and I have something that I tell them, and I beat it into their head like again and again and again. And it's my 3 rules with everything. So whether they're starting on a new soccer team or going to school, and it's these things. It's believe in yourself, do your best, and have fun.
Yeah.
And the reason I bring this up is because I'm going to tell you something that might sound a little discouraging and not fun to hear. But the fact of the matter is you can be the best and your kids can totally screw up.
Yep.
And they can, and you know what? They have their agency. It's their life of like, okay, I'm going to do all these right things. So they end up this specific way. I know a woman who was a great mother and her son murdered somebody.
Yeah.
It's like, that sucks. That's not fair to her. Like, she did a lot of things right.
Yeah.
And I guess what I'm getting at is there has to be some element of surrender on your part. That's what those 3 rules to me kind of combined together, they equate to, is like, I'm gonna do my best. I'm gonna believe in myself. I'm having fun, and I'm gonna let go of the rest.
Yeah.
And as a parent, I think it's really important to get there, or else you'll be driving yourself crazy thinking you have all this control. And you do have some control over influencing them and setting a good example and all those things. But in the end, you don't have all the control, right?
Yeah. Yes, that I love that. I think you're right. Surrender has been big for me, just in my walk, but also I love that it ties right back into just the fact that I can't predict anything. I'm not guaranteed, but right this minute, my kids aren't either.
God's will is going to get done.
Yep. I think I think maybe a lot of this came up because the oldest went away. My first went to college, right? So he's not here anymore. And it just, like, did I teach him enough? Like, instant, all the, like, and I was like, did you feel this way? I didn't know how hard it was going to be. And I was like, wow, this is way harder than I thought it was going to be. And then all the questions come in. Did I teach him this? Did I teach him that? Does he know enough? I'm like, he is 19. He's got to figure some of this out on his own. It's okay. Surrender, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah. Maybe I just need somebody to tell me it's okay and it's going to be all right.
It's going to be all right. You're doing good work. Your healing is happening in your relationship. I can tell you're an amazing mom. Your kids are lucky to have you. When I was talking about love, like, I can tell just by talking to you, like, you love them so much. And I'm sure they know that. I'm sure of that. So
I do. And I love my husband a lot too.
Yeah.
And I love our family a lot. So it's worth fighting for. It's the best fight. Yeah.
I think that beautiful. And I would just say that that's something that I come back to myself all of the time, is when I start looking at, we just dropped off we've got 2 kids dropped off at college now. And both times it's like same things, panic, especially more from my wife than even from me, like crying at night. Like, did we teach them this? And what about this? It's like, we've done what we can. And the measuring stick is always, I like what Brannon said, have I done my best?
Right.
And if I've done my best, then the next solution is there's no need to worry and I need to surrender. If I haven't done my best, there's no reason to worry until I've done my best. So just
to work.
The measuring stick is your best. The measuring stick isn't the outcome. It's the input. And I hear that in you, and your process of your own personal recovery is now, because you've had to go through it, and I'm sad that you've had to go through it, it's now one of the biggest gifts you have to offer to the people in your life, because it's taught you things and it's forged you into somebody different. And if you're going to have to go through the terrible part of it, you might as well glean all the gold from it and share it with others. And that's what I hear you doing. And I think you're totally on the right track. And maybe that's all you needed to hear today, but I do think you're on the right track. And you stay in the game and you stay consistent and you give your heart, and that's how you win. You've already won at that point.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
It was refreshing talking to you today. I feel a lot of light. I feel a lot of hope. I feel a lot of good stuff, good healing happening from you. So I really appreciate you coming on and sharing that with us. And I'm glad you had the courage to come and do this with us. So thank you.
Thank you. I really appreciate both of you. And like I said, those that went before me, and I definitely tune in and glean a lot, finding all kinds of wisdom and helpful tools and clearer vision all along the way. So I really appreciate both of you more than you'll ever know. Thank you.
Well, thank you. And we appreciate that. But we also recognize that one of the best things that we hear from people that they love about our show is that a soul like you is willing to come on and share yourself. So thank you for being a gift to those who are listening. And to those who are listening, if this is something that resonates with you, the way that you can help us is by sharing it with other people. Thank you to all of you for this kind of journey that we're on. Brannon and I are extremely grateful, and you guys have a great week.
Yep. We'll see you.